The Thelians had signed a treaty within days of the Council's acceptance of humanity's terms. Their government had learned their lesson. Prime Minister Kellen met Ryan at the orbital station, looking far more humble than their last conversation. "Captain Foster, welcome back. I want to apologize for our government's previous position. We should have supported humanity's territorial claims. What's done is done, Prime Minister," Ryan said. "What matters is the future. Thelian ships will be patrolling alongside human vessels. We protect each other now, and we're grateful for it. The raid 6 months ago taught us what happens without proper protection. We won't make that mistake again." The pirates and raiders who had terrorized the galaxy during humanity's absence learned quickly that the new order had teeth. Human-led rapid response forces could reach any system in the Council within 48 hours. Attacks that once took days to respond to were now met with overwhelming force almost immediately. Admiral Kevin Blake took command of the Council's reformed military structure. His first act was to eliminate the bureaucratic layers that had made the old system useless. His second act was to implement human military doctrine across all Council forces. "Speed and efficiency," Kevin told the assembled military commanders from dozens of species. "Those are our priorities. When a threat emerges, we respond immediately. No committees. No excuses." Some of the alien commanders resented taking orders from a human. Most recognized that humanity's military success spoke for itself. Within 6 months, Council's forces were actually functional for the first time in their history. The weapons smuggling investigation moved forward with surprising speed. Within 30 days, as the treaty required, investigators had identified everyone involved in selling weapons to the Kryn. 3 species had officials who were guilty. The trials were public and fair, but the sentences were harsh. The galaxy needed to understand that the new order didn't tolerate corruption. Several high-ranking officials were removed from office. Some faced criminal charges. The message was clear: betray the Council's trust and face real consequences. A year after humanity's withdrawal, the galaxy had stabilized into a new equilibrium. Species that had once taken humanity's contributions for granted now competed to be seen as reliable allies. The Council itself had transformed from a talking shop into an efficient governing body. On Vorton Prime, the Council chamber had been rebuilt, larger and more impressive than before. At its center was humanity's permanent seat, positioned where everyone could see it. Jake Morrison sat there now, reviewing the agenda for today's session. Chancellor Vrix called the meeting to order. Before starting the regular business, he made an announcement that had become tradition at every session. "Before we proceed, I wish to acknowledge humanity's contributions to galactic security and prosperity. For too long, we took their service for granted. The Council committed a great injustice, one that nearly cost us everything. We will not forget that lesson." He turned to Jake, his crystalline form showing patterns of respect. "Ambassador Morrison, humanity taught us that leadership requires more than words. It requires the courage to walk away when disrespected. The Council is better for that lesson, painful as it was." Jake stood to address the chamber. Every species representative fell silent, waiting for his words. This was another change. Before, speeches by human ambassadors had been ignored or talked over. Now, everyone listened. "Chancellor, members of the Council, humanity never sought dominance over other species. We still don't. What we sought was simple respect, fair treatment, and recognition of our contributions. Now that we have those things, you'll find we're the most reliable allies in the galaxy." He paused, letting his next words carry weight. "But remember this day. Remember what happened when you pushed humanity too far? We walked away once. We proved we don't need the Council. The Council needs us. That hasn't changed. It never will." The chamber remained silent for several seconds after he finished. Nobody challenged his words. Nobody could. Everything he said was true, proven by 6 months of chaos that had only ended when humanity chose to return. "We will not forget," Ambassador Vrix said quietly. The session proceeded to regular business. Proposals were debated. Votes were taken. Human representatives exercised their new authority carefully, but firmly. When something threatened galactic security, humanity's voice was decisive. When something was obviously foolish, humanity's veto stopped it. After the session ended, Lisa found Jake in the corridor outside. The Solteran representative looked like he wanted to argue during the security discussion. He knew better, Jake said. They all know better now. Argue with humanity and risk being left out when the next crisis happens? Nobody wants that. They walked through the rebuilt Capitol, past monuments to species who had contributed to Council history. A new monument was under construction, dedicated to the Battle of Vorton Prime. It would feature human ships prominently. Do you think it will last? Lisa asked. This new arrangement? Jake considered the question. As long as we maintain our strength and they remember their fear, the galaxy learned 2 lessons this year. First, that humanity holds everything together. Second, that we're willing to let everything fall apart if we're not treated fairly. That's a dark foundation for peace. It's an honest foundation. Better than the old system of empty words and broken promises. Jake stopped walking and looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, human warships maintained their eternal vigil. We didn't create this situation, Lisa. The Council did by taking us for granted. We just forced them to face reality. Back on Earth, President Helen Carter reviewed reports from across the galaxy. Every indicator showed improvement. Piracy was down 70%. Trade routes were secure. Conflicts were being resolved through diplomacy backed by credible military force. The galaxy was more stable than it had been in decades. Greg Williams entered her office with the latest polling data. Your approval ratings are at 83%, Madam President. People see the withdrawal as a strategic masterstroke. It wasn't a masterstroke, Helen said. It was a desperate move born from frustration. We got lucky that it worked. Lucky, or you understood galactic politics better than anyone else? Helen smiled. Maybe both. The important thing is, we changed the conversation. Humanity isn't asking for respect anymore. We're demanding it, and we have the power to back up that demand. She turned to look at the map of the galaxy on her wall. The blue territory marking human space hadn't grown much, but it didn't need to. Earth's influence now extended across the entire galaxy, not through conquest, but through proven necessity. The universe trembled when we left, Helen said quietly. And when it stopped trembling, everything had changed. Species that ignored us now hang on our every word. The council that dismissed our concerns now implements our policies. We didn't become galactic rulers, but we became something better. What's that? The foundation. The support structure. The force that holds everything together. She looked at Greg. And everyone knows that if you damage the foundation, the entire building collapses. Outside her window, the sun set over Earth's capital. Above, in orbit, human ships stood ready. They would always stand ready. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was not just another species in the cosmic community. Humanity was the species that made the cosmic community possible, and they would never be taken for granted again. The new order held. Ships patrolled. Worlds prospered. The galaxy moved forward into an era of stability and security, all built on the foundation of a simple truth. Those who give the most deserve the most respect. The universe had trembled when humanity withdrew. Now it rested secure in the knowledge that humanity had returned, not as servants, but as the pillars holding up the sky. And those pillars would stand firm as long as the galaxy remembered the cost of trying to stand without them. Ake, you saved us. Humanity saved us. I don't have words to express save it, Chancellor, Kevin interrupted. I have a message for you from President Carter. Are you ready to listen? The Chancellor's colors shifted. Of course, anything. President Carter is sending Ambassador Jake Morrison back to Vorton Prime. He's carrying a document outlining terms for humanity's re-engagement with the galactic community. You should read it very carefully before the Council meets. Terms. Admiral, surely after what you just did, we can discuss. No discussion, Chancellor. These terms are non-negotiable. Accept them, or we leave again. And next time we won't come back. Kevin ended the transmission before Vrix could respond. Below, fires still burned on the surface where some Kryn weapons had gotten through. The council had come within 3 hours of total destruction. They wouldn't forget that. They couldn't forget that Jake Morrison arrived at Vorton Prime 12 hours later. The council chamber had been damaged in the attack, so they met in a temporary facility near the planet's capital. Every species had sent representatives. Some had to appear by hologram because their ships couldn't reach Vorton Prime in time. Jake stood before them with the same confidence he had shown 6 months ago when he announced humanity's withdrawal. Beside him, Lisa Harper stood in her uniform, a reminder of the military force that had saved them all. "Members of the council," Jake began. "6 months ago, I stood in your original chamber and announced humanity's withdrawal. You didn't believe we would actually leave. You thought we were bluffing? You thought we needed you." He paused, looking around at the assembled aliens. "You were wrong. Humanity doesn't need the council. The council needs humanity. The past 6 months have proven that beyond any doubt. Now President Carter has authorized me to outline terms for our return." Jake pulled out a physical document printed on paper, old-fashioned but symbolic. He held it up so everyone could see. "These terms are non-negotiable. Question them if you want, but understand that we will not change them. Accept them, or we leave, and next time the Kryn come, you'll face them alone." The Saltirian representative started to speak, but Jake raised his hand. "Let me finish. First term, humanity receives full voting rights on all council decisions. We're not asking for a voice anymore. We're taking it. Any military deployment must be approved by a human representative. Any major policy decision requires human consent." The chamber started buzzing with conversation. Jake ignored it and continued. "Second term, all territorial disputes involving human claims will be resolved within 60 days. Every single one. No more committees. No more delays. Human representatives will sit on every arbitration panel. Third term, the weapons smuggling investigation will be completed within 30 days. Full prosecution of everyone involved. No exceptions. No diplomatic immunity. If you sold weapons to the Kryn, you will face justice." Now the chamber was getting loud. Several representatives were shouting. Jake raised his voice. "Fourth term, any species requesting human military assistance will sign a mutual defense treaty. You will contribute ships, resources, and personnel. The days of humanity doing all the work while you do nothing are over. Fifth term, all technology sharing agreements will be reciprocal. We give, you give. Equal exchange. No more taking human technology and giving nothing in return." Jake set the document down on the podium in front of him. Final term, a permanent human seat on the Council's Security Directorate with full authority over crisis response. When the next emergency happens, and it will, humanity will have the power to act immediately without waiting for committee approval. The Soltorian representative stood up, his reptilian face showing clear anger. "These terms are outrageous. You're asking for complete control of the council." "We're not asking," Jake replied. "And we're not seeking control. We're seeking respect and recognition for what we actually provide. 200 years of protecting this galaxy. And what did we get? Indifference. Committees. Empty promises." The Kellian representative spoke up. "Ambassador, some of these terms are reasonable, but others are too extreme. Perhaps we can negotiate." "No negotiation," Jake said firmly. President Carter was very clear. Accept all terms or humanity walks away. You have 24 hours to decide. He gathered his papers and walked toward the exit. Lisa followed. Behind them, the council erupted into chaos. Shouting, arguing, some species threatening to leave themselves. Jake didn't care. He had delivered the message. Now the council had to decide if their pride was worth more than their survival. In the corridor outside, Lisa spoke quietly. "Think they'll accept?" "They don't have a choice," Jake replied. "We just saved 12 billion lives. We proved that without humanity, the council can't protect itself. Every species in that room knows it. Some of them are really angry. Let them be angry. Anger fades. Fear doesn't. They're terrified right now. Terrified of what happens if we leave again. That fear will make them accept our terms. Back on Earth, President Helen Carter watched the news coverage of Jake's speech. The galaxy was in shock. Some outlets praised humanity's demands as fair. Others called them imperial overreach. Nobody could deny they were justified. Greg Williams entered the office carrying reports. Initial reactions are coming in. The Kellians have already indicated they'll accept. The Virin are leaning toward acceptance. The Sultarin are putting up resistance, but they're alone. How long until we know for sure? The Council is voting tonight. Emergency session. They know they can't take the full 24 hours. If they delay, they look weak. Helen nodded. Any word from Admiral Blake? The fleet is holding position over Vorton Prime. The Kryn haven't tried to return. Kevin says his people are ready for whatever comes next. Helen turned to look at a map of the galaxy on her wall. Human territory was marked in blue. It looked small compared to the vastness of space. But now, that small blue area held all the real power. We did it, Greg, she said quietly. We forced the galaxy to see us as we really are. Not servants. Not helpers. But the foundation that holds everything together. Some people are calling us bullies. Some people called us pushovers before. I prefer bully to pushover. The vote came through 18 hours later. 46 species voted to accept humanity's terms. 1 abstained. 0 voted against. The age of human dominance had begun. The signing ceremony took place on Earth. In the city of Geneva, where humanity had once united its own fractured world, representatives from all 47 council species gathered in the historic assembly hall. Some came reluctantly. Others came eagerly, hoping to be seen as humanity's friends. All came because they had no choice. President Helen Carter stood at the podium, looking out at the assembled aliens. Behind her, the flags of every species hung in a row. The human flag was in the center, larger than the others. Nobody had complained about that. Today marks a new beginning, Helen said, her words translated into dozens of languages. For 200 years, humanity contributed to galactic security while being treated as lesser members of this council. That era is over. The Treaty of Earth establishes a new framework, one based on mutual respect and shared responsibility. Chancellor Vrix approached the signing table, his crystalline form reflecting the lights and subdued patterns. He looked different now, smaller, somehow defeated. The Galactic Council accepts the terms outlined by humanity, Vrix said formally. We recognize that the past 6 months have revealed certain truths about galactic security. Humanity's contributions have been undervalued. This treaty corrects that injustice. Helen signed first, her signature bold and clear. Vrix signed next, his crystalline appendage leaving a glowing mark on the digital document. One by one, every species representative came forward and added their signatures. Jake Morrison watched from the side of the stage. Lisa Harper stood beside him, both of them in formal dress uniforms. They had started this journey 6 months ago with a simple withdrawal announcement. Now they were witnessing the complete restructuring of galactic politics. Feels strange, doesn't it? Lisa said quietly. 6 months ago, we were walking out. Now they're begging us to lead. Not begging, Jake corrected. Accepting reality. There's a difference. The ceremony ended with a reception. Alien diplomats mingled with human officials, everyone pretending the past 6 months of chaos hadn't happened. Jake found it amusing how quickly people forgot their anger when survival was on the line. The Kellian ambassador approached him, the fish-like being moving with careful dignity. Ambassador Morrison, I wanted to personally thank you. My government signed a mutual defense treaty with Earth last week. We feel much safer now. The Kellians were always reasonable, Jake said diplomatically. You voted with humanity on most issues, even before the withdrawal. Yes, and we paid for it politically. Other species called us human sympathizers. Now those same species are competing to sign treaties with Earth. The Kellian made a sound that translators interpreted as laughter. Funny how things change. The real changes became apparent over the following months. Human battle groups deployed to strategic positions across the galaxy, But this time, they weren't alone. Every deployment included ships from allied species, contributing according to the mutual defense treaties they had signed. Captain Ryan Fosto returned to Thelion 3 as part of a joint defense force. Ian's officer. Lieutenant Wells, send all sensor data to Council Military Command. Include a note that human forces will not be responding to this threat. Yes, sir, Karen Wells replied. She had been transferred to the Lincoln after the incident at Thelion 3. Kevin had read her file. She was a good officer, but that day had shaken her. This wouldn't help. The response from Council Command came within an hour. It was marked urgent and addressed directly to Kevin. He read it twice, then read it again to make sure he understood correctly. The Council had no available forces. Their ships were scattered across the galaxy, dealing with the chaos that had erupted since humanity's withdrawal. The best they could do was assemble a defensive fleet in 3 weeks. The Kryn would reach Vorten Prime in 4 days. They're asking for help, Sam said, reading the message over Kevin's shoulder. They're basically begging. Note the lack of any actual offer, Kevin replied. They want us to save them, but they're not offering anything in return. 2 hours later, the personal call came through. Chancellor Vrix himself, looking directly at Kevin through the video link. The crystalline being's form was pulsing with stress patterns that Kevin had learned to recognize over the years. Admiral Blake, I am contacting Earth Command, but I wanted to speak with you directly. We need immediate assistance. The Kryn will reach Vorten Prime in 96 hours. We cannot stop them alone. Chancellor, I understand the severity of the situation, Kevin said carefully. But my orders are very clear. Human forces defend human interests only. 12 billion lives, Admiral. Does that mean nothing to humanity? 2 million human lives meant nothing to the Council 2 years ago, Kevin replied. We called for help during the Kryn incursion. We requested assistance. You formed a committee. It was different. That was a border dispute, no, Chancellor. That was an attack on civilian populations. The same thing you're facing now. The only difference is the scale. Vrix's form flickered with colors Kevin didn't recognize. If Vorten Prime falls, the Council collapses. The entire galactic order will fall into chaos. Even humanity will suffer from that, perhaps Kevin said. Or perhaps a new order will emerge, one that values the contributions of those who actually keep the peace. Admiral, I am authorized to offer. Stop, Kevin interrupted. You can't authorize anything, Chancellor. You don't have that power. Contact Earth directly. Speak with President Carter. But I'll tell you now, empty promises won't be enough. If humanity saves Vorten Prime, it will be on our terms, not yours. He ended the call. His crew was watching him with mixed expressions. Some looked proud. Others looked worried. Everyone understood what was at stake. Sir, what if the President doesn't respond in time? Karen asked. What if Vorten Prime actually falls? Then the galaxy learns that actions have consequences, Kevin said. For 200 years, humanity protected everyone. The Council took that protection for granted. They treated us like servants. Now they get to see what the galaxy looks like without us. Back on Earth. President Helen Carter received the call from Chancellor Vrix. She took it in the Oval Office. With Greg Williams and General Paul Hammond present, they had been expecting this. The intelligence about the Kryn fleet had reached Earth hours ago. President Carter, we desperately need human assistance, Vrix said without preamble. The Kryn will reach Vorten Prime in 4 days. We lack the forces to stop them. Chancellor, I seem to recall humanity requesting assistance 2 years ago, Helen said calmly. Your response time was quite poor, Madam President, please. This is about more than past grievances. If Vorten Prime falls, the Council collapses. The power vacuum will destabilize everything. Even Earth will suffer. Possibly, Helen agreed. Or possibly a new, better council will emerge. One that actually respects its members. What do you want? Vrix asked, his form flickering rapidly. What will it take for humanity to help? I don't want promises, Chancellor. I don't want committees or procedures. I want real change. Formal voting rights for humanity. Recognition of our territorial claims. Prosecution of those who armed the Kryn. A complete restructuring of how the Council operates. Those are significant demands. Those are the terms, Chancellor. You have 4 days to decide. Will you accept real change? Or will you let pride destroy everything? I must consult with the full Council. Then I suggest you consult quickly. Every hour you waste is an hour closer to Vorten Prime's destruction. Greg immediately started talking. Madam President, if they refuse and Vorten Prime actually falls, the political fallout will be enormous. Some people will call us monsters for letting it happen. Some people already call us monsters for the withdrawal, Helen said. What matters is results. If the Council wants humanity's protection, they pay humanity's price. No more free rides. And if they refuse? General Paul asked. Helen looked at the display showing the Kryn fleet's progress. Then we wait until they're 3 hours from total destruction. We let them feel real terror. We let them understand what it means to face annihilation. And then, when they're staring into the abyss, we offer them one last chance. That's cutting it very close, Madam President. But it has to be close, General. They need to feel the fear. They need to understand, deep in their bones, that humanity is the only thing standing between them and chaos. Only then will they accept our terms without trying to negotiate them down. She stood and walked to the window. Somewhere out in space, Admiral Kevin Blake and the human fleet were waiting for orders. Soon, very soon, those orders would come. But not yet. Not until the Council had learned its lesson. How long until the Kryn reach Vorten Prime? She asked. 94 hours, Greg replied. Then we have 91 hours to let them suffer. After that, we'll see if they've learned anything. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the stakes. Everyone understood that what happened in the next 4 days would reshape galactic politics for centuries. Humanity was rolling the dice on the biggest gamble in history. But Helen Carter wasn't worried. She had read the psychological profiles of every council member. She had studied their histories, their cultures, their fears. They would break. They had to break. Because the alternative was extinction. No species chose extinction when offered another option. The universe had trembled when humanity withdrew. In 4 days, it would learn to kneel. The Battle of Vorten Prime began exactly when Admiral Kevin Blake's sensors had predicted. The Kryn fleet dropped out of hyperspace in attack formation, their weapons already charging. The Council's defensive fleet, hastily assembled from whatever ships could reach the capital in time. Moved to intercept, it was a slaughter. Kevin watched from the Lincoln's command bridge, positioned just outside the combat zone. His orders were explicit. Watch but do not engage. Let the Council fight. Let them lose. Let them understand what humanity had been protecting them from all these years. Council flagship is taking heavy damage, Lieutenant Sam Martinez reported. Their shields are failing. Multiple ships are breaking formation. On the tactical display, the Council fleet was falling apart. Their ships were older, slower, and poorly coordinated. The Kryn cut through them like scissors through paper. Every minute, another Council ship disappeared from the display. Sir, we're receiving distress calls from multiple Council vessels, Karen Wells said. They're requesting immediate assistance. Denied, Kevin said, his voice flat. Continue monitoring. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Council forces fought bravely. But bravery wasn't enough. Their ships burned. Their crews died. The Kryn pushed forward. It's getting closer to Vorten Prime with every passing minute. On the planet's surface, 12 billion beings watched the sky and waited for death. Kevin checked the time. The Council had 3 hours before the Kryn broke through completely. 3 hours before orbital bombardment began. 3 hours before everything fell apart. His communicator beeped. The message was from Earth, encrypted and marked for his eyes only. Kevin read it twice, then smiled for the first time in days. Lieutenant Martinez, signal all ships. Prepare for combat operations. We're going in. The bridge erupted with activity. Officers who had been watching helplessly for hours suddenly had purpose again. The Lincoln's massive engines roared to life. Around her, 40 human warships did the same. Sir, the Kryn are detecting our approach, Sam reported. They're attempting to reform their lines. Too late for that, Kevin said. All ships, weapons free. Let's show them what humanity can do. The human fleet hit the Kryn formation like a hammer striking glass. Human weapons technology had always been superior to anything else in the galaxy, but the Council had never seen it deployed with such overwhelming force. What the Council couldn't do in 6 hours, humanity accomplished in 30 minutes. Kryn ships exploded. Others fled. Within an hour, the entire invasion fleet was either destroyed or retreating in chaos. Kevin didn't pursue. His orders had been clear on that point too. Save Vorton Prime, nothing more. The Lincoln took up position in orbit around the planet. Below, 12 billion beings were celebrating. Above, Kevin prepared for the next phase of the operation. Communications? Get me the Chancellor, he ordered. Vrix appeared on screen, his crystalline form flickering with colors Kevin had never seen before. Relief, maybe. Or gratitude. Hard to tell with the Vrin. Admiral BL. The council chamber on Vorton Prime was enormous, built to hold representatives from 47 different alien species. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Jake Morrison stood in the center of the circular floor, surrounded by aliens of every shape and size imaginable. Some looked like insects. Others resembled crystals that somehow moved and talked. A few were just floating clouds of gas held together by energy fields. Jake had been Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 5 years now. In that time, he had learned to recognize the sounds of different species breathing, eating, or just existing. The Vrin made a constant humming noise. The Saltarine clicked their teeth when they were thinking. The Kellians smelled like cinnamon when they got angry. Today, Jake was about to make them all very angry. He touched the datapad in his hand, feeling its smooth surface. The document loaded on it had been approved by President Helen Carter herself just 6 hours ago. Earth's government had spent 3 months debating this decision. The vote had been close, but ultimately everyone agreed. Humanity was done being the galaxy's doormat. The Vrin High Chancellor called the session to order. His crystalline body reflected the chamber lights in rainbow patterns across the walls. The Council recognizes Ambassador Morrison of Earth. You requested emergency speaking time. Please proceed. Jake took a deep breath. Behind him, Lisa Harper stood in her military uniform, representing Earth's defense forces. She gave him a small nod. They had rehearsed this moment a dozen times, but actually doing it felt completely different. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Jake began, his voice amplified by the translation system that converted his words into 47 different languages simultaneously. I come before you today with a historic announcement. After 200 years of membership, humanity is formally withdrawing from the Galactic Council. The chamber fell silent. Not the normal kind of silence where people stop talking. This was the shocked silence of creatures who couldn't believe what they just heard. Jake counted to 5 in his head, giving them time to process. Then the chamber exploded with noise. Aliens shouted in languages that sounded like music, grinding rocks and everything in between. The translation system struggled to keep up, creating a feedback loop of overlapping voices. The Chancellor's voice boomed over the chaos. Order. We must have order. The noise slowly died down. Ambassador Morrison, surely you cannot be serious. No species has ever left the Council voluntarily. We are completely serious, Chancellor, Jake replied. He pulled up a holographic display that appeared in the air above him, visible to everyone in the chamber. Let me explain why. For the past 200 years, humanity has contributed more military vessels to Council operations than any other 3 species combined. This chart shows the numbers. The hologram displayed bars of different heights, each representing a species. Earth's bar towered over the others. The next closest was barely half as tall. We have provided soldiers, ships, and resources to keep the galaxy safe, Jake continued. When the Torgoth rebellion threatened the outer systems, who stopped it? Human ships. When the plague of Kelasinine needed medical support, who sent doctors and supplies? Humans. When pirates attacked trade routes, who patrolled and protected them? Humans. He swiped his hand and the display changed, showing a different chart. This shows voting power on council decisions. Notice anything interesting? The bars were almost all the same height. Earth's bar was actually slightly shorter than average. Despite contributing the most, humanity has been denied voting rights on key security decisions. Our territorial claims have been dismissed 23 times. Species who contribute nothing have more say in galactic affairs than we do. A Solteran representative rose, his reptilian face showing what Jake had learned to recognize his indignation. Ambassador, you must follow proper procedures. There are channels for these complaints. Proper procedures, Jake repeated, letting sarcasm drip from his words. Let me tell you about proper procedures. 2 years ago, the Kryn attacked our outer colonies. We sent distress calls to the council. We requested immediate assistance. Do you know what happened? He didn't wait for an answer. Nothing. The council formed a committee to study the situation. While that committee held meetings and wrote reports, 2 million human civilians died. We fought the Kryn alone and drove them back with no help from anyone here. The chamber had gone quiet again. Some representatives looked uncomfortable. Others showed no emotion at all, though Jake never could read alien expressions very well. After the war, we discovered something interesting, Jake said, pulling up another display. The Kryn had weapons they shouldn't have possessed. Advanced technology that matched designs from 3 council species. He highlighted the names. We brought evidence to the council. We requested an investigation. That was 18 months ago. He paused, looking around the chamber. Would anyone like to update me on the progress of that investigation? No one spoke. That's what I thought, Jake said. The committee is still forming, still reviewing procedures, still doing nothing while the species who armed our enemies sit in this chamber pretending to be our allies. The Kellyan ambassador, a being that looked like an upright walking fish, spoke up. Ambassador Morrison, humanity has always been valued. We appreciate your contributions. Perhaps we can discuss reforms. Discuss, Jake said flatly. We've been discussing for 200 years. We're done discussing. We're done contributing our resources, our people, and our technology to a council that treats us like servants instead of equals. Lisa stepped forward and handed Jake another data pad. He glanced at it, then looked back at the assembled aliens. Effective immediately, all human military forces are withdrawing from council operations. Human ships will return to Earth-controlled space. Human soldiers will come home. Human resources will be redirected to protecting human interests. You cannot do this, the Chancellor said, his crystalline form flashing red with what Jake assumed was anger or alarm. There are treaty obligations. Agreements spanning centuries. Check those agreements carefully, Chancellor, Jake replied. They all include withdrawal clauses. We're invoking them. As for treaty obligations, we'll honor existing defense pacts with individual species who have treated us fairly. But the council itself? We're done. He started gathering his papers. Lisa did the same, moving with military precision. The aliens around them began shouting again, some demanding explanations, others making threats. A few trying to offer last-minute compromises. Jake ignored them all. He had said what needed to be said. He walked toward the exit, Lisa beside him. Representatives tried to block his path, but he simply walked around them. No one actually touched him. That would be a diplomatic incident even bigger than what just happened. As they reached the massive doors, Jake paused and turned back. One more thing. The galaxy is about to learn what it's like without humanity holding everything together. When the pirates come, when the raiders attack, when the next crisis hits, you'll handle it yourselves. Good luck. You're going to need it. He walked out. The doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder. In the corridor outside, Lisa let out a long breath. Well, we did it. No going back now. No going back, Jake agreed. He pulled out his communicator and sent a message to Earth. 3 words. Withdrawal is official. Within hours, every human ship in the galaxy received new orders. Come home. Within days, the galaxy would begin to understand just how much they had relied on humanity. Within weeks, they would be begging for Earth to return. But that would happen on humanity's terms. Not before, Captain Ryan Foster sat in the command chair of the defense station orbiting Thelion 3. The station was small compared to military bases, just enough to house 50 personnel and operate the sensor array that monitored the entire system. For 3 years, Ryan had commanded this post. Keeping watch over the peaceful trade world below, Thelion 3 was beautiful from orbit. Blue oceans covered 70% of the surface. 3 continents were connected by massive bridges that you could see from space. The Thelians were good people, mostly. They traded fairly, welcomed visitors, and never caused trouble. Their government was stable. Their economy was strong. The only reason they stayed safe was because human ships patrolled their space. Ryan stared at his tactical display and watched 17 red dots moving toward the planet. His sensors identified them easily. Marauder-class raiders, criminals who preyed on peaceful worlds. They had never attacked Thelion 3 before because they knew human forces would respond. That was 3 months ago. Before the withdrawal, incoming transmission from Thelion government, Lieutenant Karen Wells said from the communications station. She was young, only 24, fresh out of the academy. This was her first real posting. They're requesting immediate assistance. Ryan closed his eyes for a moment. He had known this would happen eventually. Put them through! The face of Prime Minister Kellen appeared on the screen. The Thelian looked like a taller, thinner human with pale green skin and large black eyes. Captain Foster, thank the stars. We have raiders approaching. 17 ships. Our defense force cannot handle that many. We need your help? Prime Minister, I'm sorry, but I cannot help you, Ryan said, hating every word. Earth has withdrawn from the Galactic Council. We no longer provide security for non-allied worlds. Kellen's expression changed from relief to confusion to fear in the space of 3 seconds. But you've protected us for decades. We have an agreement with the Council. You have an agreement with the Council, not with Earth. I suggest you contact the Council's Rapid Response Force. Captain, please, Kellen said, his voice rising. There are 12 million Thelians on the surface. Those raiders will kill thousands before help arrives. Ryan looked at his tactical officer, Lieutenant Don Cooper. The younger man shook his head slightly. The orders from Earth were clear. Human forces would defend human interests only. No exceptions, unless the world had a formal defense treaty with Earth. Mr. Prime Minister, where was your government's vote during the territorial dispute last year? Ryan asked quietly. When Earth claimed the Deneb sector, your representative voted against us. You sided with the Council. That was politics, Kellen protested. This is about innocent lives. 2 million innocent human lives were lost during the Kryn incursion, while the Council did nothing, Ryan replied. I'm sorry, Prime Minister. Contact the Council. There's nothing I can do. He ended the transmission before Kellen could respond. The command center was silent except for the quiet beeping of sensors. Everyone knew what was about to happen. Everyone hated it. How long until the raiders reach the planet? Ryan asked. 20 minutes, Dan replied. They're not even trying to hide. They know we're not going to stop them. Ryan watched the red dots descend toward Thelion 3. His crew watched with him. When the first reports of attacks came in, Karen turned away from her console, tears in her eyes. Sir, the Thelian capital is under attack. They're reporting heavy casualties, noted Ryan said, his voice flat. He had to be the captain. He had to follow orders. But inside, he felt sick. The raids lasted 6 hours. When the marauders finally left, it killed 4,000 Thelians and stolen enough resources to fund their operations for a year. The Council's Rapid Response Force arrived 8 days later, exactly as Ryan had predicted. Ryan filed his report and waited for the fallout. It came faster than he expected. Within a week, 7 more systems reported similar attacks. Pirates who had been quiet for decades suddenly realized the galaxy's most powerful military was no longer protecting everyone. They struck like hungry sharks, sensing blood in the water on Earth. President Helen Carter sat in the Situation Room deep beneath the Capitol building. Screens covered every wall, showing news feeds from across the galaxy. Every screen showed the same thing. Chaos. Reports coming in from 19 systems now, her chief of staff, Greg Williams, said. He looked tired. Everyone looked tired. The withdrawal had been in effect for 3 months, and the consequences were worse than anyone had predicted. Pirates, raiders, and opportunistic attacks. The Council's forces can't respond fast enough. What about our forces? Helen asked. All accounted for, and back in Earth-controlled space. No casualties. But the crews are getting restless. They don't like watching other worlds burn. Helen turned to her Secretary of Defense, General Paul Hammond. The old soldier stood with his arms crossed, studying the displays. General, your assessment? The galaxy is learning a hard lesson, Madam President, Paul said. For 2 centuries, humanity kept the peace. We were so good at it that everyone forgot what the galaxy was like before we showed up. Now they're remembering. The Council is requesting another meeting, Greg added. The Chancellor wants to discuss our return. Greg pulled up a document on his tablet. The usual. Respect, appreciation, a voice in future discussions. All the same empty words we've heard before. Voting rights. They're calling that a separate issue that needs more study. Recognition of our territorial claims also requires further discussion through proper channels. Investigation into the weapons smuggling. The committee is still being formed. Helen turned back to the screens. A new report showed the Kellion system under attack. The Kellions had been one of the few species that actually voted with humanity on most issues. She made a note to offer them a defense treaty. Send our response to the Chancellor, Helen said. Tell him we appreciate the invitation, but we're not interested in returning under the same conditions we left. If they want humanity back, they need to offer real changes, not promises. They're not going to like that. Madam President. Greg, they need to understand that humanity isn't desperate. We're fine. Our systems are safe. Our people are protected. Every human ship is back where it belongs, defending human interests. Meanwhile, the galaxy is tearing itself apart without us. She pointed at the screens. Every attack, every casualty, every world that burns. That's evidence of what humanity provided for 200 years. We held the galaxy together. We were the glue. They took us for granted, and now they're learning what happens when the glue dissolves. Some people are calling us cruel, Greg said quietly. There are protests on a dozen worlds. They're saying we're letting innocent people die. We're letting innocent people die, Helen said bluntly. Just like the Council let 2 million humans die during the Kryn incursion. The difference is, we're doing it to make a point. They did it because they didn't care. General Paul cleared his throat. Madam President, if the situation continues to deteriorate, we could see major wars breaking out. Some species might try to fill the power vacuum we left behind. Let them try, Helen said. And when they fail, when the galaxy is on the brink of collapse, then we'll talk. But we'll talk on our terms, not theirs. She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over the city. Somewhere up in that sky, beyond the atmosphere, human ships sat in defensive positions around Earth and her colonies. They were safe, protected, secure. The rest of the galaxy would have to learn to protect themselves. Or they could swallow their pride and give humanity what it deserved. Respect, recognition, power. How long do you think they'll last? Greg asked, joining her at the window. Not long, Helen replied. A few more months at most. The Council is used to stability. They've forgotten what chaos looks like. We're going to remind them. She turned away from the window. In the meantime, start preparing a list of terms for our eventual return. When they come begging, and they will, we need to be ready with exactly what we want. Real voting power. Territorial recognition. Security guarantees. Everything we should have had from the beginning. If they refuse, Helen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then we let the galaxy burn a little longer. Eventually, they'll understand. Humanity isn't just another species looking for a place at the table. We're the foundation the table stands on. Without us, everything collapses. She walked out of the Situation Room, leaving her advisors to monitor the continuing chaos. Above Earth, human warships maintained their vigil. They would stay there, safe and secure, while the galaxy learned its lesson. The universe had trembled when humanity left. Soon, it would beg for humanity to return. And when that happened, everything would change. Admiral Kevin Blake had been in the military for 32 years. He had fought in 7 major conflicts and countless smaller skirmishes. He had commanded everything from small patrol ships to massive battleships. At 54 years old, he thought he had seen everything the galaxy could throw at him. He was wrong. The sensor display on the bridge of the battleship, Lincoln showed something that made his blood run cold. 300 Kryn warships, moving in perfect formation, heading straight toward the heart of Council space. This wasn't a raid. This wasn't a border skirmish. This was an invasion fleet. Tactical, confirm those numbers, Kevin ordered, hoping the sensors were malfunctioning. Confirmed, sir, Lieutenant Sam Martinez replied from the tactical station. 312 Kryn vessels. Multiple ship classes. They're maintaining radio silence, but their trajectory is clear. They're heading for Vorton Prime. Vorton Prime. The capital of the Galactic Council. Home to 12 billion beings from dozens of species. If the Kryn took Vorton Prime, the Council would collapse. Everything would fall apart. Communications, get me Earth Command, Kevin said. Priority 1. We waited for the connection. Kevin studied the Kryn fleet. They were staying just outside human-controlled space, careful not to give Earth any reason to engage them. Smart. The Kryn might be aggressive, but they weren't stupid. They knew humanity's military was the only force in the galaxy that could stop them. The face of Admiral Frank Pierce appeared on the screen. Frank ran fleet operations from Earth. He and Kevin had served together 20 years ago. Kevin, I'm looking at the same data you are. Tell me I'm seeing this wrong. You're not seeing it wrong, Frank. The Kryn are making their move. They're heading straight for Vorton Prime, and they're staying out of our territory. Time to intercept. If we launched right now, 3 days. But our orders are clear. We defend human space only. Frank was quiet for a moment. I'll inform the president. In the meantime, send the data to Council Command. Mark it as courtesy intelligence. They're going to ask for help. I know, but that's not our decision to make. The transmission ended. Kevin turned to his communicate.